Okay, ready to go, guys?
We'll call the Board of County Commissioners meeting for May 2nd, 2023 to order. Beth, would you please do a roll call?
Barry,
Here.
Steve, Bo,
Here.
David,
Here. We have a quorum. We'll proceed. If everyone would please rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, consent agenda, gentlemen, what are the wishes?
Motion to approve is presented, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Motion carried. Looks like we got bid openings, Dennis. You're up.
Okay, the first one is County 42. Bid from Jensen Brothers, $3,847,882.28.
Okay, anybody got any questions for Dennis on that? Looks like it's fairly close to the engineer's estimate.
Make a motion, we approve Jensen Brothers bid for County 42.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. County Road 12. Mayo Construction, $2,888,242.05. Jensen Brothers, $2,999,769.39. Knife River, $3,774,531.83. The low bid is Mayo Construction.
Okay, any questions? What are the wishes?
Well, I guess I'll make a motion that we approve Mayo Brothers for County 12.
Second.
And that was Mayo Construction.
Yeah, Mayo Construction, not Mayo Brothers.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't approving two of them. All right, so you're good with that, Bo? Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay. Countywide pavement markings, traffic safety service, $256,512.26.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. Motion carried.
Next is we had to rebid the culverts. True North Steel, all shapes and sizes is the only alternate we have. for metal pipe. And this is for Williams and Divide County.
What are the wishes?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. And one or more tandem axle plow truck with slide-in sander, Wesley Motors with a Northern Truck Equipment Monroe plows, $285,510. Wesley Truck with Burt's Equipment Henderson, $258,531.
How long will it take to get them?
Henderson. Oh, probably 15 to 16 months.
And this bid, I mean, if it is 16 months, this is still, the price is still,
Correct.
Any other questions? What are the wishes?
move to approve the Wesley Motors bid. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Wesley Motors for the Burt's Truck and Equipment, the $258,531.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Dennis. Planning and zoning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michelle Hogan with County Planning. Our first project today is LU-0013-23, which is Ryan Montanaki on behalf of Wade Garfield. They're requesting a zone change to the rural residential zoning district. The subject property is 10 acres, and the property is currently within the agricultural zoning district. They are requesting also a minor subdivision that will create 2 lots. The parent parcel is a full quarter section west of State Highway, so approximately 158.03 acres. The 148.03 acre lot will remain in the agricultural zoning district, while the applicant, as stated, is requesting the zone change to rural residential for the proposed 10 acre lot. The newly created lot is to house grain bin storage as well as various farm equipment. Access to the newly created lot will be off of 136th Avenue Northwest, which is also US Highway 85, and the larger lot can be accessed off of 136th Avenue Northwest or 73rd Street Northwest. It is currently approved for Mylar already and is just contingent on the zone change approval.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I'd make a motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation with staff's comments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Beth, roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, so the second one is LU-0015-23, is Carrie Farnsworth on behalf of Facilis Constantinos. They're requesting a conditional use permit for an additional dwelling within the urban residential zoning district. It's located in Ironwood Estates subdivision, Lot 7, Block 2. Township has approved this with the stipulation that it would remain with the applicant or resident and is non-transferable. They're requesting a conditional use permit for the additional dwelling attached to the garage. The lot is currently within the urban residential zoning district, which does allow for a second dwelling with the CUP. The applicant and owner plan to utilize the additional dwelling for Carrie Farnsworth's adult mentally challenged son. They are currently working with company on building plans to construct their single-family home within the lot as well, with the attached apartment on the garage, either above or behind, just depending on building costs. And at this time, the building plans are all contingent on the approval of the CUP. The access to the property is off of Ronan Avenue.
I would move to approve following planning and zoning's recommendations.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Motion carried.
The last one today is SP-0018-23, which is a re-subdivision of lots 6 and 7 of Block 1 of Riverview Country Acres subdivision and lots 1R and 2R of Block 1 of Riverview Country Acres subdivision being a rearrangement of Lot 5, Block 1. For re-subdivisions, the Williams County Planning and Zoning Ordinance and subdivision regulations require the County Commission's approval of the re-subdivision request and to authorize the chairman's signature. The proposed re-subdivision will take the existing 3 parcels and create 2 lots. The purpose of this re-subdivision is so that CP Holdings LLC can purchase approximately 4 acres of what is currently known as Lot 6, which will be combined into what they currently own, and it will be part of the heavy industrial zoning district. The remainder is going to be combined into what is known as Lot 7 and will remain in the rural residential zoning district.
Are there any questions? Is the applicant present on it, or? No? Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes.
Thank
Motion
you.
carried. Thank you. Department heads, looks like you're up, Beth.
Good morning. I have a oil and gas lease that we advertised, and we received a proposal from Murex Petroleum Corporation. And the proposal for this oil and gas lease is a 3-year paid-up oil and gas lease, a bonus payment of $1,500 per net mineral acres, which totals $3,003.75. There's 2.0025 net acres and 3/16 royalty paid on producing wells. If you approve it today, this is the only offer we received, and I would add onto this $53.10 for the advertising cost for the ad, and I would suggest you accept the offer and authorize myself to sign the lease after reviewed by legal.
Okay, anybody got any questions for Beth on the oil and gas lease? If not, what are the wishes?
Move to approve and authorize Beth to sign after legal has a chance to review.
And do you approve the conditions, accept the conditions that I noted?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Motion carried. Thanks, Beth. Lindsay.
oh wait, I had one more.
Oh, hang on for a second. Beth has one more thing.
I have two companies that are wishing to purchase minerals from us, not lease them, purchase them. We normally don't do that since I've been here, but it's up to you whether or not you approve it. One is Clear Fork Royalty and the other is CP Royalties, and they want to purchase minerals from us. One is specific and the other one just says, we want to purchase.
Well, just out of curiosity, how much are they offering?
They're not really. This one just says, we want to purchase anything you have. And this one says that they want to purchase 320 gross acres operated by Kraken Resources, Section 28, Township 158, Range 98, and that's all they say.
Does anybody have any other questions on that for Beth? Okay, I would assume somebody can make a motion on this.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to refuse the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Thank you. Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Motion carried. Now, Lindsay.
Good morning. I have a couple things for you today. The first being a quick introduction of our study team for the Quality of Life Strategic Study that you approved a couple of months ago. The study team is here this week from Minneapolis to meet with folks and organizations and groups across Williston, Ray, and Tioga. It's kind of our focus for this week, and that'll continue to iterate over the next couple of months. So Joel Feldman is here, who is the lead on the project, and is supported by Jacob Gunther and David Grusel, who is from the design arm of things. So just want to let you know they're here, and we have started with the study. Any questions for them around that? So then the next item, our community grant program. This is the first cycle of the first time that the county has done this. And today we bring to you the recommendations from the Finance Committee, which served as the application review committee. We received a total of 28 applications for more than $30 million in requests. There was $500,000 budgeted for this initial cycle of grants. You were provided with 3 different categories of recommendations: recommended, not recommended, and recommended to fund utilizing other budgeted funds. So with regards to the recommendation, applications from the following organizations were recommended to fund: AcroStars Gymnastics, Choice Recovery Counseling, Coyote Clay Target League, the James Memorial Preservation Society, Mondac Gymnastics Support Group, the Norseman Museum, Ray Golf Association, the Lynx of North Dakota, the Western Star Foundation, Wild Rose Housing, Williston for Kids, Williston Parks and Recreation District, and Williston State College. Those were recommended to fund within the grant program itself. And then outside of the grant program, utilizing other budgeted funds, the Finance Committee recognized the importance of the application put forth by the University of Mary for scholarship programs to bring bachelor programs to Williston in person. And it's recommended to fund them fully, utilizing other community engagement funds. Of those not recommended, again, we received 28 applications. There were a lot of great projects. Some were quite large, some were a little bit smaller. And so really with the recommendations of those that weren't to be funded, a lot of them we'd like to continue a conversation with just to ensure that they have support and know that there's other ways. And so quality of life study being one for some of those larger projects that submitted applications. Any questions on those?
I guess I would like to thank the Finance Committee and Lindsay and everybody involved for putting this together. Looks to me like there's some great projects that we're gonna hopefully be able to help out.
And then in terms of the program details, the only other question that I want to ask, initially the program was written that expenses that were incurred prior to the award date were not eligible to be part of the grant reimbursement. But since this award date was moved from March 21st until May 2nd, just if you want to honor the original award date for what those expenses would be, or if you want to honor the new one for consideration.
I think that only makes sense, that if they were planning on moving forward, so. Has anybody got any questions for Lindsay or any other comments from the board? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, we'll move to approve the recommended along with the University of Mary for other budgeted funds.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, Beth.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Motion carried.
And then the last item for you is a grant extension request from Chatter on their 2021 behavioral health grant. This is for extending the use of dollars to be used outside of Williston for services that they have been putting towards Ray Public Schools, and then an extension for them to have a little bit more time to try to hire a mental health nurse practitioner.
I would make the motion to extend or to accept their extension request.
Oh,
Okay, is there a second?
authorize the chair
Oh.
to sign the amendment.
And authorize the chairman to sign.
David, you good with that? Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a discussion item for the previous motion. Do we need to include the previous date, or was that implied? The previous deadline?
Let's finish this one because we have a motion on this
Yep.
on the table. So let's go back to that when we're done with this one. Okay, so now on the extension of the grant request, no further discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes. Motion carried. Now, Steve.
I would like to amend my previous motion to include the March, was it 23rd?
21st.
March 21st, 2023 deadline. So any expenses occurred,
The original award date.
yes, from the original award date to now.
Okay, and is that okay with you, David? Do we have to vote on that again, Karen, or is it just amended? Okay. Okay, so do we have any discussion on the amended motion? Whew. Beth, we're going to take a roll call on the amended motion, please.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Okay, anything else you can confuse us with, Lindsay?
I think I'm done for today.
Thank you, I appreciate it. All right, Dennis, we got county highway and engineering.
Okay, we need authorization for chairman to sign the County 15 contract for Century, or CSI, sorry.
Motion to approve and authorize the chairman to sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, and then on our bridge replacement, And our bridge removals that we got the grant money for, we sent out the RFP, we went through the process. Ackerman Esfold was selected. We need to authorize chairman to sign that to move forward.
I would make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign the RFP for the bridge replacement
And removals.
and removal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Barry, Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And now we have the Atlas Power Data Center appeal. Who's going to be talking? Is that gonna be Rick? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and open up, come up, make sure you introduce yourself for the record, and we'll hear the appeal.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Richard Tabish. I'm with FX Solutions. I'm the general contractor on the Atlas project, the permit holder. I have with me Kiger Hill with Three Forks, Ray Peterson, Peterson Electric, Ron Dix, and then I see Dale Haugen with Montreal Williams has showed up as well. With regard to Mr. Heimer's analysis, of which I respect, and we're going to try to mitigate the conditions that he'd set forth. I'd first like to say, open up by saying that this project is, I think, important to the county. We spent roughly $176 million so far on that project. It's scheduled by year end to be probably around $240 million. So $142 million of that has been the construction. The issues that we're facing with regard to occupancy, I think, is probably the most prevalent issue. However, I'd like to start with the neighbors first. The noise, we've always, one of the reasons that I initially bought that land prior to selling it to Atlas was it was zoned in heavy industrial. So we always knew that one of these data centers would have some noise. I'm sorry. These data centers always have some fan noise, a little bit of buzzing, but you know, we haven't had the chance yet to finish what we started. It's scheduled for berms, sound barriers, fencing with the sound barrier fence with the slats in it, which seems to knock down the noise quite a bit. But the biggest thing is, even we went out there last night, and right when I flew into town, I think the first thing we did was went out to the site with decibel meters. And if it would please the commission, I could just go through it very quickly. Mr. Haugen had his decibel meter as well as myself, and then we photographed it. From the stop sign at the road at Highway 2, we were at 49.4 decibels. The next picture that we took, and I'll leave this with you guys, was right south of the site, and we were at 55.4 decibels. And the site was running. I mean, we're not playing games here. We got to town. We decided to go out and look at it for ourselves. And all of our contractors are back populating the job again, so obviously this is a big concern. Directly south, or directly west of buildings on phase 2, we were at 62.5 decibels. So we had 2 meters, and Mr. Hill was photographing. We also moved over to the next phase, phase 1, and Mr. Haugen's phone was 69 decibels, mine was 59.4. That is directly west, right on the road, you know, facing the neighbor's home. Then we went to the north over to by Montreal Williams substation. We were at one phone was, or meter was at 56.6, and the other was at 64. We went directly inside the building for the highest rating, inside, right where the servers are, and we were at 84.3 decibels indoors. We then found 2 buildings where fans were installed facing each other in between buildings 1 and 2. And that was 77 on one and 72.6 on the other meter. So I think with the zoning, or I feel comfortable with the zoning, I don't think those readings are high. However, I have reached out to the neighbors, and I do believe I have a letter from Michelle and David. And I can read it into the record. It seems like it's a little more favorable to me than you, so I'm not comfortable. But this is from David and Michelle Arand. To start, I must state that I'm very displeased with the due diligence from all parties, starting with the zoning change for the property under review. Our local officials have failed to be transparent with the community in which they serve about the environmental impacts of this project, the scale it is. With that being said, we have been given hope to rectify the noise disturbance that has come from representatives of FX Solutions. These conversations with FX have created ideas for short-term and long-term solutions for noise that provide some hope and for relief for our family. In essence, gentlemen, what I did was talked about the finality of the project, the berm, the grass. It isn't, where it's at right now is under construction. It's not a completed project. And we had a pause in funding, an unfortunate pause. I think everybody reads the newspapers. When Bitcoin dropped and we had some DeFi markets crash, it created a problem in financing for Atlas Power, but Atlas got through that. Obviously, we're comfortable. We've been paid a substantial amount of money. We didn't walk off in the face of Atlas. We walked off just not to dig a deeper hole in the contracting. Prior to us walking off the job and putting a pause in the project, Mr. Peterson, we had full inspections, which I have the North Dakota State Electrical Board. I have their entire inspections, dating back to the beginning of the project, all the way up to the time that we had left the project. When we started phase 2, they had come out and inspected buildings, and Mr. Peterson can expand on that if you guys wish for something more in detail. We've worked closely with James Schmidt, the state electrical inspector. We've tried to be very transparent with everybody moving forward. There's no smoke and mirrors in this project whatsoever. However, it's an important project. I think it's an important project for the county. It's an important project for load for Montreal Williams. The load's dependent on. We realize and understand and appreciate the concerns of the county, but I'm here to tell you with regard to occupancy that we now have, on the job today, 15 electricians are in the buildings. We've put up a fence around the entire perimeter. We're gonna go ahead and fence phase 2 to where nobody can actually get even into phase 2 and have specific security on that while Ray and his crew are finishing. The only problem with that phase is we had to put fans in the customer who's in there, which is a very large contract, which we'll discuss in a moment. We're just having problem cooling the servers. We've got a site just like that in Butte, Montana. We discovered that fans, they were engineered in. We tried them without the fans, that didn't work. Without those fans, we have no walls. Since Mr. Heimer had come out and raised the concerns, we started fabricating the walls, which knocked down the decibel rating of what everybody's hearing now. There's air conditioning units have been put in to cool servers, and then the walls are being enclosed. Another concern was the fire road. Kiger Hill with Three Forks Services, we went out, we bladed the roads. It was a tough time of year for an inspection because with snow, mud, and us not wanting to get in between buildings or get on road. I mean, anybody that's been in the dirt business knows it's just, you don't go out there. We didn't want to break the crust on the ground for fear of the dust going through the servers. But I think it was a good inspection. It trued us up in a sense to where we're very aware of what the neighbors are listening to. I'm sensitive to that. I'm gonna make a commitment that I wanna go talk to all the neighbors. If there's trees, berms, things that we can put up in their yards to help them, we're willing to do that. We don't wanna be the eyesore in the community. We want something that the community can be proud of, the tax base, the load that it's creating, and we just want it to be a benefit and not a nuisance to anybody. However, You know, we just, out of curiosity today, we went out to neighbors B18. It's an Oasis property on 142nd Avenue, and it was 76.8 decibels from the berm on location. So by an industrial standard, for what we're looking at, standing right directly outside of one of those buildings at 59.4 and 62 on the other, I don't think we're doing too bad with an unfinished site. I think the fan walls and the fan schedules, at night it gets cooler. Fans probably won't run at night. The fans, your peak times are around 1 o'clock, you know, to maybe 5, 6 o'clock at night. And in the interim, we, after talking to the state electrical board, they also had concerns about open walls and gear getting wet. If it's gonna rain at this point and there's a wall that's open, which we are curing right now with the fabric to roll down, we're gonna go ahead and shut those buildings off. We don't wanna create any hazard for anybody in the buildings that is gonna be in there. However, the only people in the buildings right now are gonna be licensed electricians operating under the state permit number that has been issued by the state electrical board. So I think if you go down through the check boxes of noise compliance, we're not as bad as it seems. However, we do acknowledge the noise, and we're gonna go ahead and do what we can to mitigate that. Number two, we've talked about the heavy industrial zoning. I mean, that's why we bought it, and that's how the only way we were able to build it is on that. We also, Mr. Bullock, who was a part of the report, who was on site at the time and didn't know how to turn anything off. We're now, like I say, if something happens, Mr. Peterson and his crew, he's got people who are gonna be there on response 24/7. If something needs to be shut down, it's very easy. Licensed electricians can do that, and licensed electricians will be occupying the building. We kind of had a standard through phase one. We were allowed to operate and progress while we're under construction, and we'd kind of like that same standard in phase two, and here's why. It's the revenue is what makes the day over there. I mean, without the revenue is what's building that project right now. If that revenue goes away, the project goes away. Phase two is 120 megawatts. Phase one is a split between the owner's equipment and hosting equipment. Phase two is 100% hosting. The imminent or the potential shutdown is a huge alarm to the customer who's in there. If it shuts down, we know what's gonna happen. I mean, servers get loaded up and they just go somewhere else. I don't know that we would recover from that. The imminent danger of that is how do we get back, how do we fund the project going forward? We're finally at a point where all of the contractors are caught up and satisfied moving forward with the terms and conditions of payment. And if that terms and conditions of payment come to cease, I think we're back to square one and an unoccupied site. So having said that, I'm really open to hear anything from Mr. Heimer and as well as the commission, and we can address, you know, piece by piece. But I think I've kind of hit on all the areas: occupancy, noise, and the state electrical board has given us 1 month. They basically had come out and inspected the site, and I think they had given us till 5/26 of 23 to respond. In their report that was sent to us, their corrections were: number one, electrical equipment inside the buildings to be protected from outdoor elements, rain, sleet, snow, blowing, dirt, etc. The electrical equipment from the Bitcoin mining equipment are not listed for outdoor use or listed to be exposed to these elements. Per NEC 110.3 and North Dakota Standards 24.1-06-01-10. All electrical equipment must be removed from the building that are not complete to prevent hazardous situation. And corrections are due by 5/26 of 23. What we're asking is allow us to make those corrections in this 1 month. I think the next 30 days is gonna be instrumental, and most of those buildings have already been closed up, and we're agreeing. Rain comes over, excuse me, rain comes over the hill, we're shutting the facility down, so. Having said that, I'm here to tell you that Atlas Power, FX Solutions, Three Forks Services, Peterson Electric, all of the contractors that are on this job are setting their best foot forward in lieu of of also working with your neighbors and trying to figure out better ways to mitigate the noise. Just looking down through if there's anything I'm missing. Noteworthy is that that we've currently got 46 jobs within the contracting crew right now on that site that's North Dakota Jobs. We've also got another 18 employees hired by Atlas Power on that job as well. So we're vested. I mean, I bought a shop here. I mean, we're not from out of state, just over here poaching. I mean, we're kind of here to stay. Ray Peterson's got a house. We've got rentals. I mean, we're spending money in the county, and I think I'd like to just, with your blessing, keep moving forward with this the way we started it. So if there's anything else, I'm happy to answer questions.
Does anybody got any questions?
Mr. Tavish, you promised to do a lot of things. I've sat in this chair for over 18 years, and we've had a tremendous amount of people since the oil boom started to come to this board and request to do things and promised us this and promised us that. They left town, and the promises were failed. I want you to tell us and tell the community what you're going to do to guarantee what you just promised you're going to do, as far as the noise and as far as the non-conforming uses of performing business, as you might want to call it, in that building before you had a certificate of occupancy. The permit, correct me if I'm wrong, was you were the one taking out the permit, and the permit is in your name.
Correct.
You're a contractor. I would tend to believe that you know that any structure that is built in Williams County, whether it's residential, commercial, or industrial property, cannot be occupied until a certificate of occupancy is permitted. It's not our fault that you guys did business in that facility. You knew ahead of time, or you should have known as a contractor, that you can't start that facility until the certificate is issued, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But you choose, or somebody chose, whether it was you or the Washington family or whoever, made the decision to go ahead and fire that plant up before you technically and legally could. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll answer here in a moment.
But I guess I'll let you answer my question as far as what guarantees are you going to back up your promises?
Thank you for that. And first,
Can you talk into the mic a little more?
thank you for that, Mr. Montgomery. And first, we had timelines that we had to be online with regard to energy as well. I mean, Mr. Haugen and Montreal Williams bent over backwards to get us that transmission from Basin Electric. I mean, as you guys know, you were involved in a lot of the infancy of this, and there was a push to get it moving, push to get it under revenue. And I think there was no secret. We didn't go into those buildings and occupy them and turn them on in violation. It was a standard agreement with inspectors and everybody coming out that it was going to be okay as long as we were under construction. I think the wrong that we're trying to right today is that when that project was left and those servers were running, that was the wrong that we're going to correct today. It was unoccupied, and it was occupied with servers and technicians, and there was nobody else in there. It wasn't under construction. And I completely agree with Mr. Heimer's position and your position. How that's being corrected, and the promise I'm going to tell you today, is we have a full crew, fully embodied, back in full construction on that project to rectify these problems immediately. We've done a lot in, I think it's 3 days we worked over the weekend. Cameron wanted the fences up. All of his concerns we discussed. We put fences up. We're going to go above and beyond and just make it to where there's no outside access, even to phase 2, with its own security. It's running. We're burning energy, which if we don't take it, it's gone. I mean, the energy market's a tough one. That's really was our biggest hurry, aside from the revenue. The revenue off this is what builds the project. So I do stand in front of you today, and I heard every one of your concerns, and I agree with you. I'm not here to argue with you, but I will tell you that we are going to put our best foot forward. I've got a very good reputation. I've been here for 10-plus years. I hold master service agreements. I stand in front of you guys today. I'm not having anybody else fight my fight. It's going to be my word to this commission that we're going to move forward and we're going to make that a safe site. I'm going to work with the neighbors and see what we can do to help them in the meantime while it's under construction. But there will be berms built. It will be sightly. And the project, I think phase 2, we should probably within the next 30 to 40 days, hopefully have all the fans and have all the fan walls in. But the critical portion is just canceling out. If it shuts down, it destroys this project with regard to revenue. So that's where I'm asking for some leniency and some help with regard to just allowing us to keep our workers working and finish this project.
Mr. Tavish, do you have a contact for the chairman of the Judson Township?
No, I don't. Geiger Hill is with.
Okay, so, I mean, they're the local governing board for that area. I mean, I recommend that you guys get a meeting with Judson Township and all the residents of that township immediately. I mean, this is the meeting that I was hoping would have happened a year ago or 6 months ago. That needs to happen. I think my biggest concern for the residents is, the folks on that west end right there, the decibels might not be what you consider unbearable, but 24/7, those folks are living there. So if all these folks that are working in this facility had to live in a fifth wheel camper across from that site, how would they operate on a daily basis? Do you think they would be fine? That's what I'm saying. We've got little kids that have to go to school. We have parents that have to parent, and those folks have to go to work and make a living. And if they have to listen to that garbage 24/7, it's unacceptable. 100% unacceptable. And I appreciate that you're coming here talking to us about what's going to happen, but it doesn't look like anything happened until our cage got rattled on Friday. I find that unacceptable. The other things that I'm finding are disappointing is the fact that we had a quarter of land that was in industrial zoning that I didn't know about and under secrecy got purchased for a project that hardly any of us knew about. And the only reason I knew about it is because you guys were in front of the water board talking about the distribution of water. So I think this needs to investigate all of the land that is industrial and make sure that it's not next to residences. Because if I would have known about it, I would have done everything I could to make sure that that land could not be used for this because it shouldn't be next to these houses. But now that it is, we have to deal with it.
Right.
And in my opinion, that building to the west, I don't care if you're working on it, shut it down. Those folks should not have to listen to that until it's done and you have additional sound barriers to fix it. I have more, but I'll let some other folks answer questions.
Anybody else got any questions? You'll get a chance. Let's not have this conversation back and forth, but you will get a chance to talk.
So you did mention fence. What fence are you putting up now?
Well, there was a construction fence. Security was a large issue with Mr. Heimer, people being able to just a freelance walk in and walk in a building. So Three Forks put up it's a fluorescent orange security fence around the perimeter of the property. And then we've got 24-hour security, which he also requested. So all of the concerns that he had immediately, we answered and we employed. And the buildings, with regard to the buildings, you'll notice that there's fabric coming down on a heavy-duty fabric, breathable fabric coming down on all the exhaust sides. The buildings have a cold aisle and a hot aisle. Obviously, they're like a radiator of a car. Cold air in one side, hot out the other. And all the hots usually face each other. So what we're doing is those are the only open ends on any of the buildings. That most of them have already been closed up. All the fans have been delivered. We can complete the walls, so we're full blasting. There was about a month and a half hiatus there that we lost, but there's nothing any of us could do about it. That once that building was loaded, security deposits were made, we came into revenue. It brought the project back alive to where we can finish it and complete everything. Landscaping, there's fabric and rock going down. There's dust control on the roads that's happening. So it's back. I can tell you today, we've got a pretty substantial crew of people working on that job right now to fix it. So I do agree with you on the Judson Township, and that we want to sit down. I'm not here to be an enemy of anybody and stuff it to anybody and say, hey, it's zoned heavy industrial. Tough. I mean, if we're going to be a part of the community and a good neighbor, I want to hear all the neighbors' concerns and talk to them and see how we can help on it. It is there. There is going to be some noise off of it, but if there's things we can do and help those neighbors in their yards to mitigate that sound, and at nighttime it should be a lot less. Like I say, the heat's what makes the noise. That's when everything comes on and the cooling comes on, kind of like a fan kicks on in your car when it starts getting warm. So. I'm concerned, and I'll take your well-noted advice and with Judson Township and get everybody together and do what we can, to move the thing forward in a sense to help the neighbors.
And all due respect, I hope you're ready,
Yeah.
because the rear end chewings I've been getting are probably minimal compared to what you're going to get, but you're going to have to listen to it.
It's
And then you're going to have to guarantee these folks how and why you're going to be a good neighbor. I mean, we're all residents of this county, and we have to live and work and do business here. So that's what you're here to do, and that's what you're gonna have to do for these folks.
yes.
Is there an option to bond the berm and/or sound mitigation? Is it, in other words, if it doesn't get done, it gets done with the bond? Well,
Couple more questions, Mr. Tavish, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can you tell us, Rick, what your anticipated completion date is for all of this, of what you just said?
45 days, probably, for everything to be done. I believe that the walls, the immediate concerns of the county will probably be done by, I would say, the end of the week, a little bit further, probably 2 weeks. But to fabricing the walls, we've used up all of our fabric. We have stuff being transported right now. Security end of it is pretty much finished. The noise end of it, we're gonna start working on. I'm gonna get with Three Forks today and talk about moving dirt for the berm and what different materials we can use. We may have them build a soft berm with some lighter materials like sand, a mixture, so something that's absorbent. And there's also some engineering, some sound walls that can be put up. I think at the end of the day, and that's why we need to be in revenue. I mean, revenue was supposed to take care of all the pretties on the project, the trees, the grass, everything. And if at the last note, if nothing worked, then a sound barrier wall goes up like a freeway around there. Except there's a lot of sound absorbing stuff that really helps, that knocks the sound down.
Okay, just one final question, if I may. The fence. Why did it take Mr. Heimer's office to request you to put a fence around that facility at this late in the game? I mean, I would tend to believe there's a tremendous amount of youth that living in the area, and that place was wide open. Anybody, I would tend to believe, could have walked into that property, and we all know young boys especially are curious. If somebody would have had to walk in there, and children especially, and gotten electrocuted, then what? I mean, to me, common sense has always told me and shown me that when a project of your size is built, usually that the fence is one of the first things put up after the site has been prepared. Why did you wait until the county required you to put that fence up?
Well, the fence was always in the car, just moving dirt, moving buildings. There's power lines underneath. If we put a berm or a fence up, it would impede access to get to the buildings. And it was just nothing, up to this point, it was never, I mean, we didn't have the problem up to the time that Mr. Heimer pointed out, I gotta have security on that, because the buildings were unoccupied. And I think Cameron, in our phone conversation, pretty much hit it on the head. He just said it wasn't as big of a problem until we showed up and it was a ghost town. I mean, there's no contractors, there's no protection against the public on that. And then that was the red flag. You've got buildings operating and nobody here. Prior to that, we didn't put, I mean, not that we didn't put thought into it, but we have 50, 60 people on site all day long and people loading servers, and the population of it with the security and everybody that was on that project was so immense that we just didn't have a problem. You know, we're making great strides. We put up 240 megawatts in under a year, which was, I pat everybody on the back for that as far as from a building aspect. But is it our fault for not putting that up? Yeah, you know, I'm gonna admit that. There's probably something that should have been thought of first, but I mean, we've got our detention pond right next to the road. We've got building number 9 there that we're gonna have to go in behind and get fenced. The berm is gonna go right up against the building, which it was designed to do, to take the direct blast. If the building sat back from the berm, it would be a lot less impactive as far as containing noise. So our comfort level is real high that we can contain a lot of that noise off that building. So, yes, you know, it probably should have been the first thing, but I guess logistically and everything that we were doing, it didn't happen.
I have one quick question. You said that you have more fabric on order.
Yeah.
So now is that the permanent wall, just fabric hanging there, or
No,
was there?
no, it's not. No, the
Why
fans.
aren't you building the walls?
Well, because the building kits, phase 1 was ordered with louvers. Phase 2 was ordered with fans, and phase 1 was outfitted with louvers. So the fans were an aftermath because of the cooling issues. Once we started up, the winds are predominantly out of the southwest here. So the way those buildings were designed is no negative pressure or no negative pressure on the intake, vacuum pressure, and no negative positive. They cool fine, but as soon as you get a wind, everything starts overheating. So the fans, about halfway through phase 1, we decided to put them in. Well, we didn't order louvers for phase 2, nor did we put the building walls up, just because you'd have to take it back down. So we're taking the majority of the louvers off, just leaving one strip on phase 1. That strip goes to phase 2, and the third row of them would go to phase 3. So in that interim, and when we went through a financial pause, everything stopped. It didn't get put up. Atlas has paid up front for all of the fan wall equipment. All the fans are on site. The flashing for the buildings is on site. And literally today is our first day back with everybody. So Ray's on site, Three Forks is doing the walls on the building, and it's gonna move very quickly. In the meantime, that west end of the building, Mr. Anderson, we'll get right after that out there and do what we have to do. If we have to put up, you know, wind screens, whatever we have to do to mitigate that noise. And I'm just telling you here, guys, I'm gonna do the best I can, you know, to make that project as compliant as we can have it, you know, in that zoning area.
Is there consideration for the changing and replacement of equipment on that west end for something doesn't sound like that?
Yeah, I want to get out there today and look at that. I think we can muffle that quite a bit. I mean, I'm gonna get with Kiger, and maybe we can put something, maybe we could put a berm on that. We could build something there and actually get a fencing contractor to fence on top of the berm with windscreen, something like that. It's amazing what that does. I mean, it should bring it down into the, you know, 50s, which is, for that zoning, it should be. It's never, I don't think any of the neighbors in my discussions with David and Michelle, who live directly across from it, they know. I mean, they said, had we would have never bought our place. It was industrial zoned alfalfa field, you know, and then we come along and purchased it, and I'd like to think we didn't do that with any smoke and mirrors. I mean, we looked at the opportunity, and it was zoned right. The substation was sitting there. It created load for Montreal Williams. I mean, it checked all the boxes, and we bought it, and we started building on it. And here we are, you know, dealing with the aftermath of it. Had it not been zoned that way, guys, we would have never bought it. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to hide behind that. I mean, we're gonna do what we can to mitigate this and help. But at the end of the day, you know, that's why we're there, is because it was zone heavy industrial. So it had an oil rig gone there, I mean, and started pounding everything in the ground, it'd have been the same problem. We're just the current problem on it. But I think we've got a little bit more latitude to try to help out, you know, on that west end. And I don't know. I mean, we can only do the best that we can. And but it is gonna be a facility with noise. I don't think that's ever gonna go away.
I think the biggest challenge is money right now, and that was obviously an issue. Is there any kind of letter of credit or anything that we can sink our teeth into to know that you guys are gonna be able to pull through this?
That's something I'll have to defer to Atlas on. I mean, they've come, we know what the revenue contracts are right now, and it's more than enough to keep us moving through phase 2 and phase 3. So we're comfortable, or we wouldn't be on the job, because believe me, I mean, we got to a point where, you know, it was not anything against Atlas, but we just called them and said, until we can figure things out, we can't continue to keep moving, you know, waiting for it. And it took about a month and a half, and that phase 2 saved the project. I mean, their customer had came in, and it's tough to find somebody with brand new equipment like that to come put in 120 megawatts, and they did it, and it's happens to be the manufacturer. So, I mean, it's a contract plated in gold, you know, and that's the revenue off that, and the installments from that revenue are what's gonna carry this project all the way home.
Has anybody got any other questions before I ask Cameron to give his take on it? Okay, thank you. We'll slide over to Cameron.
You want me to sit down, George? Thank you. Yes, you can.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Good morning, Commissioners. Cameron Heimer, Development Services. I'll try to keep my comments brief, but I'll just kind of go over a simple timeline of events of what kind of led to this appeal here today. And I apologize, you'll have to bear with me. As Mr. Tabish kind of pointed out, there is a lot of players in this, and so I've been dealing with a lot of different contacts, different companies and attorneys as this has kind of come to head today. So originally, my office started receiving noise complaints roughly end of March to end of April about the facility out there. I had heard rumblings, but my office had never received a call about noise complaints. Now I'm talking about my office specifically during the phase 1 build out. So we had not sent anyone out there specific to the noises. So I was a little surprised when they were actually directing calls to our office for the noises. So not knowing that something had changed, I had went out to the property and is just like Mr. Tabish did, using simple cell phone dBA meters measured anywhere depending on the day and with the location on around roughly 60, close to near 90 decibels to the west end of the facility there. I'd got to look at the facility and had realized that the 2 buildings that are the farthest west, those are part of what they would consider phase 2. Same with I believe there's 7 or 8 on the south end. They were operating. I could hear them much louder than I ever was with phase 1. I was out there when they had some of the buildings on phase 1 running. And so I got back to the office. I consulted with the building official and with staff, including the building inspectors and fire inspector, to try to kind of understand why these buildings were up and running, because I wasn't aware that they were completed. And from what I was able to gather, that we had not issued the individual buildings in phase 2 any finals or a certificate of occupancy for the phase. In addition to that, when we issue anything, a final or a certificate of occupancy, we also make sure that the state electrical board has signed off on the project or the buildings. And I'd come to learn that the state electrical board had not signed off on that either. And so then I found that it was quite concerning that the buildings were open. The exterior walls were not finished on all the phase 2 buildings. There was no fencing around the perimeter of phase 2 or the project as a whole. And due to the knowledge that children, families live all around that facility, it was concerning to myself and to staff that that could potentially lead to a immediate hazard to life or threaten the well-being of the public within that area. And so I had sent to Atlas Powers, from my understanding they are the owner of the project, and you were correct, Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Tabish does own the permits, but I'd sent them a notice, and I CC'd Mr. Tabish as well, that there were building violations in addition to the zoning violation letter that I had already previously sent. But again, I gathered more information upon my site visit. And so as I moved forward in drafting that letter, I had sent it out to their attorney. I didn't really get, Mr. Tabish, I will say, has been good at keeping in contact. I did speak with him, but I didn't hear much from Atlas. Being that it was weighing on our mind and we had determined that the open buildings with the electricity already running through them into the equipment, that it would pose an immediate, like I said, hazard to the life or property where such connections have been made. And so we had gone out, when I say we, the building official and myself, on April 25th and issued a physical stop work order to the property. And when we went to the property, that's when Mr. Tabish had said that I'd refer to it as a ghost town, and compared to other times I'd been out there, it was just about empty. I think there was maybe 4 to 5 vehicles. When we entered the property, we had to wave down a gentleman in a truck who he had already said, Mr. Bullock, who was not familiar. From my understanding, he was pretty new on the job site, but when we had spoke with him, there was concerns about not being able to power down phase 2, which we had asked him with our stop work order. And without being able to power it down, there were, again, concerns of if there was an emergency, how would that get powered down? Another thing that we had noted when we were out there is the emergency access roads, or the roads in general, were not suitable for emergency access equipment. Now, I'm certainly not I would say by any means, knowledgeable on the weights of different fire engines and trucks and ambulances, but the interior road that would go between phase 1 and 2 was certainly a bit of a muddy mess. There was no surface put on the road. And so that again raised the concerns with power going into building or phase 2, and then made potential difficulties accessing those buildings. And the other end of that stop work order was because we had received a couple of tips that Atlas Power no longer was using Mr. Tabish, his company FX Solutions, or any of the subcontractors as the contractors for the project. Now, Mr. Tabish owns those permits, permit 1, 2, and phase 3. He has applied and received all 3 phase permits. In addition to those tips that we received, we were also told that the contractor on site was not licensed in the state of North Dakota to perform business. Now, when my office does a check to see that someone is licensed through the state, it is at the time that they fill out the building application. We then run it through the state system to make sure that they are licensed. If they're not, we will deny or hold the building permit until they can come into compliance. So the actual stop work order to stop all physical work was because Mr. Tabish, from my understanding at that day we went out there, was no longer involved with the project due to, from what I understand, contract negotiations that had failed and moving forward. Mr. Tabish did say on the record today that he is back on the project, and that would satisfy our department that he is back there again. And so the stop work order portion to stop all work because there was not a licensed contractor, I feel that today that's been taken care of if Mr. Tabish is back again. If it were to change contractors, because Mr. Tabish owns those permits, he's the only one that can contact our office and transfer him to a new contractor. If he does not wish to do so, the new contractor on site would need to reapply and pay for the new building permits, and at that time we would do the standard check to make sure that they're licensed. Again, I apologize. If you bear with me here, a lot of different angles on this one. So the 3 main issues or main concerns that we had, and I touched on a couple of them, was that the unlicensed contractors, I feel that's been taken care of if Mr. Tabish is back on the project. The facility, the concern with the zoning, with the noise complaints that we had received, and with the zoning violation notice that I had sent to Atlas Power. The zoning performance standards for the heavy industrial district do list that a buffer strip must be installed where it abuts any different zoning. I believe it goes all the way to rural commercial, urban commercial, rural residential, and urban residential. It does go into detail about those buffer strips that and how they are to be constructed. There are also 3 within the performance standards. Does list that dust, fumes, odors, smoke, vapor, noise, lights, excuse me, and vibrations from any industrial manufacturing operation shall be contained within the heavy industrial district. Now, if one were to read that black and white, I mean, certainly you would say you shouldn't be able to hear a pin drop away, and I don't think that's necessarily what my office is looking for. However, as you had mentioned, Mr. Anderson, the noise level is unacceptable. I had a worker come out to me during one of the site visits, and we almost had to yell to talk to each other just on the west side of the facility on 143rd Avenue Northwest. So that was a concern with the zoning ordinance and not meeting those performance standards. Now, the buildings for phase 2, as Mr. Tabish had already mentioned, they were up and operating, which we would consider occupied in the building world. Before we were to sign off on them, including the state electrical board. And Mr. Tabish already read some of the report that he received from the state electrical board, and I also contacted them yesterday as well. And Mr. Tabish was correct that none of the equipment or the gear in there is rated for any type of outdoor elements, whether it be rain, snow. They had also mentioned to me that if they were to get wet or to get elements on them, that the state would make them replace them. They can't just simply be dried out and repurposed again. And this is when I spoke with the supervisor of their department yesterday afternoon and learned of that. And so those are the main issues that kind of led up to today's meeting. On Friday afternoon or Friday morning, because of the life and safety and potential hazards, immediate hazards that were at hand, I had, under the authority of the building code, which is adopted by the county, it does give the authority to disconnect service utilities. And I'll just read this briefly, this paragraph, but it says that the building official shall have the authority to authorize disconnection of utility services to the building, structure, or system regulated by the code and reference codes and standards in case of emergency where necessary to eliminate an immediate hazard to life or property, or where such utility connection has been made without the approval required. And it goes on a little further about the notification requirements. And so that's why we had taken that position to have the power turned off. So I had reached out to Montreal Williams under that section of building code and had asked them to shut power down to phase 2 because it is not approved, not only by the county, but also by the state. Friday afternoon, I then got the attention of Atlas's attorneys, and I did get a response, a written response from the attorneys, their intent to appeal. Within the zoning ordinance, if somebody wishes to appeal, we would have to issue a stay on any further proceedings. So I had come to the agreement with Mr. Tabish that I would hold a stay, meaning not cut power to phase 2 until he had a chance to be heard by the county commission Tuesday morning. If he had installed a temporary fence, the fence is definitely temporary in nature, but just to make sure that any wandering children, anybody, did not have unauthorized access to those buildings where it's a life safety issue, and to have security on site. I will say that in Mr. Tabish's defense, I did go out there Saturday. They were putting up the fence, and I did go to access the road that is between the subdivision to the north and the facility on the south, and I was stopped by an employee of Atlas, and they asked what I was doing there, and they were friendly, and I gave them my business card. So they were watching who was entering the property. And so that was sufficient to get to today, but that was kind of the temporary agreement I had made to not cut power immediately. And so there's, like I said, a lot more angles and different things that different people I've been dealing with, but that's kind of a brief as it could be explanation of what we've been seeing on my office's end. And so if you have any further questions for me or even later in the meeting, I'd be more than happy to try my best to answer them, but that is where we're at right now.
Quick question, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Cameron, is there, when people come in for a permit to construct a site, often recently we started requiring a bond for completion of a barrier or a fence or tree planting, or is that not true, or am I all wet on this?
Typically, the bonding requirements, I see those come in with major subdivisions and through conditional use permit processes, but a standard building permit, there's not a bond requirement.
I'm just curious if a bond would work in this scenario. That's all I guess I'm trying to get at, is just to ensure that the berm gets built and it doesn't get forgotten, or any of the sound barrier capability.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That may be a legal question on when and if that can be required.
Mr. Heimer, one of the points that's been brought to my attention from residents is the possibility that the buildings to the west were built too close to either easements or section line or whatever. There's not enough room to put a fence or a berm or a wall or anything for sound reduction. I mean, I guess just looking at the map, I didn't think I need bifocals, but I must be getting there. But is there a way you can address that?
Typically, when we would have reviewed the plans, and I apologize, I don't have the full initial plans or build-outs in front of me, but we would check through the planning division at that time that it would meet required setbacks. I'm not saying it does, as I've not gone out there and measured, had inspectors measure recently. I would not disagree, though, with your assessment that if and when they complete the earthen berm, it's going to be a tight fit, tight squeeze in there.
Okay, I mean, just from this, there's a dotted line on the west. I assume that's the section line. This is 133.81 feet-ish, something like that. I guess I know there's 33 feet from the section line out was standard easement, and then past that, I don't know what I'm hoping there's room for something to fit. If not, it's gonna have to happen, or I guess we'll have to figure out something else.
We'll certainly look into that, Commissioner Anderson, and also to address the way the phase layout, I think I may have mentioned it. It was a little confusing for me too until I looked at the plans, but phase 2 is those furthest west 2 buildings, and then it almost makes an L shape and then heads east on the south end of phase 1. So phase 1 didn't start directly against that road either, 143rd Avenue.
Okay, any other questions for Cameron? Cameron, I just have one quick one, and it's been brought up several times. There was no certificate of occupancy. What's the normal things, the steps we take if there is no CO? I mean, and what would it take for them to get a CO?
I appreciate the question, Mr. Chair. Yes. So in a typical situation, they would receive a CO for the completed phase, which would have been phase 2. And so to obtain so you're saying if they had moved forward without first getting permission, what we would normally do?
Right. Well, that's what happened.
Yeah. So in a normal situation where we didn't feel that there was an immediate hazard to life, we would typically red tag it and then make them come in and either get a correction permit or they'd pay a fine or a fee. We do have I don't have it in front of me, I apologize, but a table of fees that were approved by the County Commission in 2012 that our building division follows if we do have to fine someone for operating or running a facility without obtaining final approval. However, the more extreme measure, if we feel that there are life safety issues at risk, is being able to not only cut the power in addition to daily fines, if we still weren't to get, I would say, call it feedback or any type of response, then we would usually consult with the state's attorney's office to pursue something further.
Okay. Nothing else for Cameron? You guys good? Okay, thank you, Cameron.
Hold on, I apologize. Maybe because Commissioner Anderson brought it up as well. I think we should address the zone change of that property originally, which was obviously has been a contentious issue for everybody. And I don't know if Commissioner Montgomery or Commissioner Ramberger were here to remember any of this, but I mean, maybe walk us through this mysterious changing of the zoning that, and I know you weren't here then either, but as best you understand.
So I can give you to the best of my knowledge, like you'd explained, it happened a couple years before I was with the county. And the only reason that I'm somewhat familiar with it is Judson Township did a records request through our office last fall, I believe, quite a lengthy one, and we were able to procure what documents we could procure. We gave to Judson Township. And again, I'm just going off what I'm able to read and records I find. I was not here for it, so I don't know of all the details in person. But from my understanding is the zone change was done sometime around 2011. I don't remember the month, again, without the paperwork in front of me. At the time, it was done by Mr. Abe Owens, and it was for, again, I don't have the legal description, but it was pretty much for the whole south end of that section. The description, from what I can recall reading, was for multiple oil field type businesses. Of course, shortly after, as most are aware, Mr. Owen had passed away. Nothing had come forward with those businesses, and so the zoning on a property will typically stay. And so because they didn't develop it, it may have not been realized that was heavy industrial because it was an alfalfa field. However, when, from my understanding, FX Solutions / Atlas Power were interested in purchasing the property, they had us do, which is standard, kind of a zoning review to confirm what it's zoned. And that's when the first time we went through the records and found that it was zoned industrial back in 2011. Again, I don't know the details. I don't know what transpired, why exactly it completely went through that process next to a residential subdivision. Unfortunately, when we look at some of these older zoning districts, from time to time, we do see what we call spot zoning, where it was spot zoning where it doesn't really fit the area. Shouldn't probably have been up against the residential. Some situations are different, but there are reasonings for it. But there are a few areas in the county, when you look around, where you will see that's what we call spot zoning. But again, I don't have complete details on that like you'd mentioned, but that's, to the best of my knowledge, kind of the history, a brief history of what was going on there. And if I may add to that, when we did receive the application, the building application for this project, we look, as we typically would, through our zoning ordinances to see what the fitment was. And one of the by right uses, meaning it didn't require a conditional use permit, was an energy facility or energy conversion facility, which this would fall under. And so I know there's also been talks about, well, the neighbors weren't notified. With a standard building permit, no different than someone building a home or a large-scale commercial industrial project, it's an administrative process that's done through our office. It's not a notification type project where there's public hearings for the permit itself. The public hearing process was typically done when the zone change had happened. Now, in the present, I think we're a little better. I would say we are a little better, the county, at making sure that the zone changes are in line with what they were approved for. Typically, there's not always, but there are contingencies if they don't start construction, especially with a CUP in X amount of months, that it would revert back to its original zoning. But a lot of these properties, from, call it the peak or the beginning of this really large pickup before the oil or when the oil was in demand, we kind of saw this to where they were rezoned and just about everyone developed them because there was such a dire need for oil-filled businesses, but this one never did get completed or started.
And I think the hard lesson learned that I was referring to is that the fact that this property laid dormant as ag land, and you used as ag land, but zoned for industrial for so long, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, though any of those zone changes now, they have a certain amount of months to start completing work, or that zone change would go back to its original zone. Is that correct or not?
You know, I apologize off the top of my head. That sounds correct, but I certainly don't want to confirm that. It may be only related to a CUP, but it could be a zone change on its own, but I can review our ordinance. I'm just trying to act as the temporary planning director right now since we have a vacancy, but I don't recall.
And that was one of my questions for you afterwards was, how do we remedy this? Because this should not have to happen. I mean, if if no dirt was turned over a certain amount of time, it reverted back to ag. This project came in, wanted to purchase this, it would have to go through the process, public hearings, all this stuff, so we could have heard a lot more public opinion. But here we are.
Yeah, and I'll certainly investigate that further to see if our current ordinance does list something similar or the same as that, and to maybe weigh the possibilities of adopting or to add on to that as well.
Okay, no other questions for Cameron? All right, I did say that I know there's several people here that would like to make comments. If you would wish to make a comment, you can come up to the mic. Please introduce yourself, make sure Beth gets your name, and then address the board. So if anybody has any brief comments, it's open now.
I'm John Sieg.
Hang on till you get up to the mic there.
I'm John Sieg. We live at 14275 Painted Woods Drive. We shortly moved out there probably mid-December. We just put up a new house. As everyone spoke today about getting to know the neighbors, I've met most neighbors out there in my passings with everybody. A lot of people are chattering about this. I just came to listen today. Maybe I don't have quite as much problem with it as everybody else because I'm never there. I work all the time. But Mama does stay home with small children, like you guys have talked, and she watches the nieces and nephews. And luckily, we've kept them all in the yard, you know, and everything. Sunday, I had an altercation, though. I got old hunting dog. He's 17. He's deaf, you know, and we were moving the kennel around and the dogs got out and we had to chase them, you know, and I didn't catch it at first, but I ended up all the way up in that property to get the old hunting dog. There was no fence. I walked all the way through Corey Seidel's yard, all the way up the hill. The dog went right through the old barbed wire fence and walked right out into that facility. Honestly, maybe I trespassed, maybe I'm wrong for that, but I walked in there and grabbed my dog. We made it a good distance in there with little kids in tow. Nothing stopped us. Nobody came and seen us. Nobody acknowledged us there. We didn't touch anything. We didn't go through anything, but there is a safety concern there because it was accessible by anybody. You know, there was no fence. There was a farmer style fence with 3 rows of barbed wire. Maybe 2 are still standing, but the hunting dog walked right through it like it wasn't even there, you know, and I don't know, the noise. Now, I don't know much about these buildings and what's going on, but now, as I said, the hunting dog's failing. He's getting up at 2, 3, 5 at night, and I gotta let him out to go bathroom. At 2 in the morning, man, I don't know if maybe the highway ain't going as busy no more, but it is louder. It is considerably louder. I have not used a decibel meter or what. I don't know if they turn them up after 1 or 2 at night because everyone's sleeping and no one's paying attention. I don't even know if that's a thing. But it's to the point where my deaf dog, when I open the back door, looks up and looks over at the buildings, you know. Both of us go, holy, it's loud, you know. I don't know, maybe hinders sleep a little bit, maybe not. I mean, we got a pretty new house and it's insulated well, but there are some concerns there they're talking about here today that I feel like they're not taken care of, you know. But other than that, that's about all I got.
Thank you.
My name is Kathy Walton. I've lived in Judson Township since '74. And I've seen oil companies come and go over the years. I'd like to speak to the integrity of this one. They bypassed our Judson Township Board. They looked at the property, whether it was zoned industrial or not. They knew there were families living in the area close by. They knew what they were going to build and what effect it would have on those families, and they went ahead anyway, and they bypassed our township board. We have seen and heard other promises from other oil. We've gone through a few booms, and we know what some of these companies do. Whether they've been here 10 years or not, they haven't been here long enough to know what we've already been through.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dale Haugen. I'd like to comment a little bit on what Commissioner Kemp said. I think the commission should really consider a bond because, again, you know, the Atlas company that had it, you know, did not pay the contractors. The contractors walked off. If the promises that are here and they submit invoices weekly, and the promises I've heard is that Atlas is going to pay them weekly, but if that payment don't come through again, what's going to happen? Them contractors going to walk off. I think they got to look at when you go around 694 at Minneapolis, the sound barriers that you see on the interstate, everything else. I think that all should be addressed, and I agree with you. A bond needs to be put up because Mr. Tabish and the group, if they don't get paid, they're going to walk off again. So I think that's the only way you're going to hold the Atlas to the fire, is figure out the penalty and the bond requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Cameron, you said you have something else?
Yes, I just wanted to follow up and just a brief examination of the zoning ordinance. The current zoning ordinance, which obviously would not apply to this project, does have an area in it that talks about to revert back to the original zone change if construction related to the approved zone change did not start within 18 months, then it would revert back unless they ask for an extension through our office. That's for the current ordinance. This zone change would have fallen underneath or been under our 1987 zoning ordinance, so it would not have applied. But just to answer that question, our current ordinance does. Yep.
Okay, is there anybody else that has just one? Give me a couple more seconds. We got a couple more folks.
Yeah, I'm Corey Seidel. I own that little flag-shaped piece of land there in property in Painted Woods. And as for fence, there, I got all their garbage. I got tin, I got metal. Just went through my farmer's fence, as Sig called it. Busted it. I've talked to some of the guys, well, a guy from Three Forks that I'm friends with, and tell him, and he's told them to go pick garbage up, but they haven't. Not that, I mean, the noise is, as says 70. I mean, them numbers are all lies. I got numerous numbers way higher than that and stuff. And if they don't, they need to definitely do something. And as for dirt barriers, you can come look at some of my trucks that are parked along the fence there. They're full of dirt, so I don't think dirt barriers are gonna work for that. I don't know, there's lots of other things too, but and as for that property, that flag shape, I owned it when it got switched, and I did not sign anything or ask anything to have it switched to light industrial. And when I noticed it, I went in and said something and never told them I wanted it changed back, and they never did. They forgot about it a few years in a row, so I'm thinking I wouldn't pay taxes on it, but I keep track of my stuff a little, so. But yeah, it's, I don't need to be shut down. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Lauren Holman.
Can you wait? Say that into the mic.
My name is Lauren Holman, and I live across from Corey on Painted Woods. I bought the house last year, and it is definitely loud, and I could talk about all of the things that everyone's covered. But my question would be, Bitcoin's tanked. They've talked about making it illegal. Everything about it's bad. The rules have been broke. If it's bad, why are we doing it? That's all.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? See, I waited. I could tell by the look on your face that you wanted to come up here.
Lacey White, 14287 Painted Woods Drive. I guess I'll just start off with last year, or June of 2021. We actually annexed into the Trenton School District. When we went through the whole process, that was part of one of the land grabs, in their words, and that was zoned agricultural. So when this all came about and showed that it was heavy industrial, it was a shock. That's immediate shock to everybody out there, because we knew nothing. We weren't told that we fought it for years and years and years. So, yeah, the 10 o'clock at night, the fans seem to ramp up. And like John said, it might be that the highway noise is down, but the sound is outrageous. Now my kid has to sleep opposite end of her bed because it's her head right at the wall. That's all you hear is fans and fans and fans, and it's progressively gotten worse over the last few months. And they still have another row to come closer to our house. And we are on the south side. I have video of what Michelle Aaron and house sounds like. I can't believe her kids sleep at night. It is bad. I have taken decibel meters. I usually range with wind about 70 to 80. I know Corey has sent me screenshots of his, 85 to 95 at some points. So it is having an impact. Something needs to be done as far as the walls. I know you had said at one time, the company, because I have a post that you posted on Facebook in response to me, that the company reported it would be a 30 decibel impact per the company. I believe it's far higher than that already. And there's 12 buildings running, if that.
I've been out there with my decibel meter and I got similar 70s, 75 to 70, except for on the road, it was about 50. But
So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see anybody. Rick, did you have one more thing? Okay.
First, to address Mr. Seidel, I take exception to being called a liar. I provided the county with our decibel meters, which are concurrent with you on the road. It's not 70, 80. I mean, we did it last night. We're going to do it again tonight. I mean, with some of the revisions we got last night, 50, 60. I had my decibel meter going.
Yep, you already went through all that, so let's move on with that.
So, Bitcoin's at $30,000. It's going up. I just thought I'd address that as well. I mean, it's not on the way down, so Bitcoin is going. But the big cat in the bag that's going to help everybody, I believe, and I'm going to push it. I just saw a text from Mr. Young, but there's a halving coming up May 24th of 2024, and when the halving comes up in Bitcoin, the reward on Bitcoin gets cut in half. So right now we get 6.5 Bitcoin for every block that we crack on this blockchain. It'll go down to 3. So the evolution of these machines is, they're like when I first started this in 2018, the machines were at 12 terahash. Now they're at 100 terahash. There's a new generation of equipment called a hydro miner that Bitmain has, who's our client out at the site. The hydro miner is self-contained. There is no fans. So the ultimate plan for the site, and I'll get back to the infancy of why it was bought here in a moment, is it's going to end up, all Bitcoin sites, unless somebody wants to go broke, are going to have to go to hydro. A hydro miner is going to run up to 300 terahash. You can't get that out of an air miner. An air miner, you're going to top out, it gets hot, but by submersing that chip in liquid, you can run them up to 5,000, 6,000 watts versus 3,000 watts, and you get that much more. We just put in a liquid immersion system over at Rainbow at the coal plant over in Bismarck, and again, 100 terahash machines running on 160 terahash. So what I'm saying on this site, and I think the ultimate plan, and the client is with us, this isn't something that's going to be permanent for the county. This is going to pay for the bills. This is an expensive facility. This is going to end up being $172 million just in build by the time we finish phase 3. But the way it's designed is the racks eventually come out, the hydro boxes go inside the buildings, because I know the county doesn't want to look at the boxes. But I mean, they've got one at Merkel over in, the Merkel paper plant over in Spokane, Washington, we went and looked at. That's the idea. Phase 3 is actually being looked at as a hydro phase instead of a fan phase. So the good news for everyone is it kind of has to go that way. You've got what's evaporative coolers that we're not going to use. The dry coolers we spec through Kelvion. I mean, this is something I just want to share with you guys rather than sit and take it on the chin, which I'm happy to do. But the only way for Bitcoin to survive, the only way to be a leader in the industry is to go with a hydro miner. You enclose the walls. There is no sound. All you would have is the dry coolers outside, which are no different than an air conditioning cooler. You have a big box, and you've got a fan, and you've got liquid going through it, and the fans are pointing straight up in the air, just like there would be an air conditioner on the top of a skyscraper or something. But it would take probably 6 of those units per building versus all those small fans. So again, back to why we bought the property. It was zoned heavy industrial. It wasn't anything nefarious on our part. We didn't hide. It was amazing that it was there, and it's amazing that it's next to a substation. That's the issue. There was no system impact studies with all the transmission lines in between. It was the ideal situation. It was a smart business decision. It made sense. We just were in the middle of building. I mean, you take a look at that versus an oil rig and everything that's going on. It's no different. I mean, from the maturity of an oil rig to the pump jacks going on site. The noise is going to take care of itself. And I'm sorry, and I feel for all the neighbors on this. However, the decibel ratings that we're taking aren't as excessive as it would be if the drill rig was set up there coming into production and fracking and generators and everything else. And we're all exposed to it. Fencing, yes, I mean, we did have a fence up when it started. We ended up running over the fence. It was a small fence that came with the property, very inadequate. All the concerns, all of everything that's being addressed, we were off the job for a month and a half. As soon as I walked back on the job, the first thing, as I said, get every man that you have, go start cleaning the property up. We've told Atlas, same thing, whatever your crews do now, they're in trash mode picking up. I mean, I've taken the bull by the horn on this thing and gone above and beyond the board. Give me a chance to fix it. That's what I'm asking. If a berm's not gonna take care of it, then we'll tear it. If it's too wide, we'll tear something up. We'll put rig mats on top of it, pointing up, just temporary. But right now, it was bought under the heavy industrial zoning. We followed everything to the letter of the law. We hired AE2S. We had CTA engineering. We submitted everything to the county. We did not walk in there under the cloak of secrecy. We did not walk in and submit our permits trying to get one over on anybody. Everybody knows what these do. I mean, the commission, we told everybody. I sat next to, there was a press conference with Governor Burgum out at Montreal Williams. We discussed what was coming. I mean, there was plenty of time to research what one of these do, but what I'm telling you, if it makes you feel more comfortable with what's happening, is the site is gonna eventually go to all hydro, and you won't hear a peep. I mean, you'll hear air conditioners, running in the summer. Fans don't ramp up at night. Fans ramp down. I mean, it just gets silent out and you hear more. I'm not gonna dispute any of the neighbors because if I was in their same shoes, I'd be doing the same thing right now. However, everybody lived next to a site that was zoned to heavy industrial. As it gets hot, the fans ramp up. As it gets cool, they go off, and the outside fans actually shut off at night. It was 41 degrees at night. We don't have the ability to turn them up to make more money or anything, and they don't work that way. Either they're on or they're off. So having said that, I'm comfortable that FX Solutions, its subcontractors, Atlas Power is gonna put their best foot forward to be a good neighbor, try to rectify the problems, and continue on the same standard that you guys have allowed us to move forward with all through phase one. We did phase one, we turned 4 buildings on early, we kept building buildings, and we progressed with that plan, and nobody, until we walked off the job, had said anything. The state electrical inspector has been there with our building startups. I supplied the record to the county of all the dates and all the inspections, and every one of them have passed. We've had no flunks on anything that's happened. So are we a good contractor? Are we a good with regard to our word and our engineering and the manner in which we've done this? Absolutely. Are we good with our promise to the community and the county of hiring people and using local talent? Yes, we have. I think that we've done everything that we've said we were going to do. And what happened in the market, I mean, it would have been very easy. I think it's better to go on than watch something get tanked and watch everybody pull it out of the ground and have a hole in the ground and have that void in energy and transmission and revenue going into Montreal Williams Electric Co-op. So having said that, I'll take some more questions from you, but we're here to stay. We're here to try to make this right. And that's the best I can give you guys. I feel we're on the right track going forward, and we're going to definitely heed great deference to all your concerns and everything with regard to the code and the county and the regulations that we have to live by. Thank you.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Tavish, you just brought up hydro for the first time in your conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
You waited till the end to bring that up. Interesting, because if that's the case, if hydro is the future, tell me why are you guys investing money and time and efforts and not pursuing hydro now?
It's not readily available now. There's only 200 megawatts of it available nationwide. We've looked at liquid immersion, which my company is kind of the leader in building what we did over at Rainbow Energy. But the hydro boxes are the ones that we want. They're made by a manufacturer called Bitmain, who's a client of Atlas Power. We want the new generation. The hydros that are out now are the S19 servers, a lower terahash. We don't want to make the investment and the hosting customer doesn't have the box on the ground. This is brand new technology that's coming about. So we would like this facility to actually be the cutting edge, the leading facility, the biggest hydro facility in the country. So air servers they're going to be a thing of the past. It's like the Top Gun movie when Admiral Kane's telling Tom Cruise, you're a thing of the past. That's kind of what's going to happen here. But when we designed this to pull the racks out and run 14 hydro boxes right down the center of those, which would satisfy the county in a sense that they don't have to look at the boxes. All of our 415 transformers will hook up to those hydro boxes. Now you put solid walls in, and that's the end of the game. But that's where that site's going, and that's where it has to go. But in the meantime, there's servers sitting, there's capital investment into those servers. We're just trying to ROI them. I mean, there's probably on that site right now $172 million worth of servers, just servers. And that's obviously, we don't take that as credit to us on our 176 million put into it, but that's the customer, the hosting client there has that much invested in it. So everybody wants to get their money out of them. They want to be in revenue. The idea is to pay the facility down. There's no way a bank, and we've been that route with the banks. You just don't go to a bank and loan money for one of these. So self-fund it and let the revenue push it forward. So
All about money.
Mr. Chairman, one question as well.
Yes, Mr. Kim.
Are you 100% solely reliant on Bitcoin only, or is there other options for you so that if there were fluctuations in the market?
No, we've right now Bitcoin, you plug it in, it revenues, you pay. But I think we've had the discussions before that high performance compute is a big deal. But the problem with that is you have to go out and get a client. There's a dwell time coming into market, and then how do you pay for the facility? The model is you have to kind of self-fund as you go. We've been through First International Bank and Trust. We've been through all kinds of financing. And when Bitcoin dropped and Core Scientific and some of those customers filed bankruptcy, that was kind of the end of us for financing. We had to redirect and under new management of the company, take a different direction that looks promising right now. So yes, HPC is a big deal. That is definitely on the table, and I know that's where North Dakota wants to go anyway. But to pay the facility down, it's one of those things. Bitcoin, especially up now, I mean, it's literally doubled in the last couple months, which means double the amount of revenue going into the facility, and that henceforth, that's why we're back there. But yeah, you're right, Commissioner. We do want to go and take an HPC avenue to that property. It'll just continually keep refining itself. It won't keep getting worse. But keep in mind, it's under construction. I mean, we've done an awful lot. These guys, our crews, our North Dakota crews, the support staff, everything that we've gotten from North Dakota, we couldn't have done this anywhere. I mean, we're on the map. People are blown away that how did you build 240 megawatts in 1 year, which we've got a time-lapse video of nothing on that land to now. And I think the county, everybody, the state can be pretty proud of what we've done and that avenue that you're talking about going. Of course, that's right in where we want to go with this. So we just need to keep it functioning, keep the revenue coming, and heed great deference to your concerns and try to make it best for everybody around. But at the end of the day, had we known it wasn't heavy industrially zoned, we would never bought it. And whatever happened way back why it didn't revert, I hope we're not going to be punished for that. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Our phone lines are open. Cameron, any of you, anything updates you guys want, it's an open door out there. Anybody wants to come out to the site, commissioners, anybody want to look at it, just let us know and we'll take you out there. So there's no smoke and mirrors, nothing hiding, but we're in the process of rectifying all this stuff immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Kathy Walton again. I just want to rebut a couple things you said. You said he followed all the rules and they're doing the best they can. They seem to be pretty impressed with themselves. They bypassed the Judson Township Board, and they didn't take into consideration the neighborhood they were dropping their facility into. And they abandoned the project just because Bitcoin dropped a little bit. That's alarming to me.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to take one, this will be our last comment that we're going to take, and then we're going to turn it over to the board.
John Sieg again. My only question with the turning it up and down thing, obviously something must have happened a few weeks ago maybe, because it has been considerably quieter. So if there's got to be a way it's getting turned up and down. Like there's no way it isn't. And if any of the commission members would like to get a decibel reading at nighttime, I hate to ask somebody to come out way late at night, but y'all more than welcome to come to our place at any time and measure from the yard. We are right to the south of the buildings. We're probably one of the closest ones. I'm right next to Corey Seidel. Y'all welcome to come out at any time and get a reading. I really push for the evening time though, and it's got to be pretty late because after 10 or so, it does get considerably louder. As he's talking about this, we're also talking, like, I'm telling you, I got there in December, and it's been a good cold winter. We've had cold and warm and whatever. These things were running full bore all winter when it's negative 20. And if we're talking fans, I consider a fan a cooling item, right? What are we going to do when it's 80 to 100? Them fans are already too loud, you know? So does the machine go down? You'd have to turn it down, right, to slow the use of it so it doesn't heat up as much and the fans aren't as loud. So if in December at negative 20, the fans are humming like none other and it's too loud already, what's it going to be in June, July, and August when we actually get some warm weather here? There's got to have to be considerably more amount of noise, I would imagine. But, sorry, that's all I have.
Thank you. We're going to turn this over to the board for discussion. So I will open it up to gentlemen and see what your thoughts are.
I would feel a lot more comfortable with some sort of a financial assurity that the problem would get remediated, right? I mean, you know, we need to have something in place to where if, you know, that it actually happens. Because, I mean, I'm no computer geek or anything like that, but, you know, if you're going off of the value of something, I mean, it, you know, up and down and, you know, it's just, it's a little too wishy-washy.
Karen, is there a method legally to bond the building of sound barrier?
Well, really, the only way to get a bond or some sort of financial security out of them is for them to voluntarily do it, because there's really nothing in the building code in this situation that requires them to post a bond. And like Cameron mentioned, usually the bond requirement in our zoning ordinances is based on subdivision, really. We have in the past, though, bonded, I think it was some sort of sewage lagoon or something like that several years ago, and that wasn't like a major subdivision, but they voluntarily, you know, agreed to the bond, and I think it was under a conditional use permit. So this is something they'd probably really have to voluntarily agree to do, unless for some reason you decided to impose some sort of conditions on, you know, the appeal that they filed. If you put some sort of condition on there saying that they have to, that you will let you continue if you post a bond kind of thing.
I guess my only comment on it, and I'm probably a step behind as far as the sound barriers, and I understand that they're coming, but if we rewind this thing back to Friday, there's no certificate of occupancy. The buildings are running, and we have, Cameron's department has gone out there and said this is not safe for people, and there's a threat to life and safety. So I think that's the issue we got to look at on phase 2 is does it need to be shut down, in my opinion, because of those different things until the actual walls are up and those types of things are done to make it safe. I believe that's what they're appealing right now.
And that's why I'm thinking that we have some kind of leverage with regards to a bond.
But the bond doesn't give a certificate of occupancy, and that's what's going on.
You're right. That's the leverage that we have to force them to get a bond, because without it, we don't have that leverage. That's what I'm suggesting. If I heard you correct, Karen.
Yep, that's correct. But the bond would have to actually really come from Atlas. It couldn't really come from FX Solutions, really. And I don't know if there's anybody from Atlas here to agree to those kind of conditions, really, or say that they would do that, really. So, I mean, and if we wanted to do that, we would have to put some sort of timeline on there in terms of, like, you have to submit a bond or agree to a bond by a certain date, otherwise, we'll move forward on the disconnection of the utility, I guess, so.
Go ahead and throw it in the mic.
Well, I was just curious as to how, say, just for instance, if Atlas was on board with this and said, "Yep, we're going to get a bond," I've never gotten one myself, so I don't know. How long does it take to get that? Imagine it's just some paperwork, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the first thing that they would really have to do is to sort of estimate. They'd have to have an engineer estimate the cost of fixing or building or whatever, and then they would have to find a bonding company to usually our bond is like 125% of the cost of finishing the project or the operations of it, really. And then they would just have to go to a bonding company. That really shouldn't be that hard, but I think the time element would be in terms of getting an engineer to estimate the cost of it, really. Did that answer your question, Barry, or? Yeah.
Chair, I think Mr. Young is on with Atlas. I think he's listening to this. I just dialed this to see, because that's maybe a question, but would that be helpful? He addressed that?
Can you tell if anybody's on, Lindsay?
He's not on the WebEx. He might be watching on YouTube, and that doesn't have a.
Yes, Cameron.
I did send his attorney, Mark Vivian, all of the WebEx information to call in, so if his attorney's provided that with him.
He's on WebEx. He's on my phone now. If you want me to hold it to the speaker over there. Okay, why don't you do that?
Okay, I tell you what, we're gonna take 5 minutes here, just a 5-minute break. So if anybody needs to use the restroom, and then we'll come back. I see a lot of big eyes, so we'll come back at 9:02. 10:02. We missed 9:02.
And if we started helping take care of one cemetery, then we have to take care of the other ones too. Because you'd set precedents. They can't take it away from the township to do something like that. Because it's state law. We have a whole
Okay, this is, which, his daughter was my daughter's best friend, and I know it, Witchett Beth. Yeah, this is Bill Thomas. I read this is. Oh. Son, yes. Son, C-A-H-N. That's my name. Oh, we were both behind him. This stupid kid. It worked too good with him. I have Costco, but they're out of adjustment, and so I have to, these are from my sister and so I have to go all the way to this branch. Drive me crazy. Like, what did you say? It's nothing,
Let him know if we're gonna listen to him on the phone. This speaker, you don't have to push the button, just say. This one, you don't push the button.
Are you on the WebEx right now?
Either that or just put it on.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting back to order. Where we were at, we were just having discussion from the board, and you had asked a question. Did you find somebody that?
I've got Jim Young, the COO of the company, who's said he's on WebEx, but he can't get on, but I can hold him up to the microphone if that's what you guys.
You want to do that? And if we want to ask some questions, let's do that.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, hang on for a second.
Yeah, Jeff Young would be the other one. He's the CEO of Atlas Power. Yeah.
What did you say his name was?
Jeff Young.
Mr. Young, are you on WebEx?
I am on WebEx, but it will not allow me to come off of mute. I believe someone has to approve that.
Okay, well, what we've got you on right now. Can you hear us okay?
Let me switch over. Give me just a second. Unfortunately, the WebEx doesn't seem to be working, but I can hear you guys now on this one.
Okay, if you can hear us, we can hear you just fine, so we can go forward as we are right now.
Sure.
I guess the question that we're posing at this point is whether or not Atlas would be willing to post a bond or other financial surety of the noise mitigation method, whatever that might be. If it's concrete walls like you see on the side of the interstate, going through populated areas, or whatever would be effective, if Atlas Power would be willing to do such an instrument.
So we would probably be willing to do an instrument of some sort. My experience with a surety is it is a performance or payment instrument, performance bond or payment bond, that has to be generated by a contractor, and not as an owner. If there's some other instrument that you guys are aware of, we would be more than willing to look into it. But I will say, I've listened to most of this meeting, except for the last bit when I was trying to jump on as a speaker. As Rick said, we do take all of these concerns seriously, and I know that there's substantial mitigation that needs done on the sound attenuation for the buffer zone. As per it's written in the plans, we would like a variance to be able to put up sound attenuation walls, and get those reviewed and approved by zoning. But because I don't think that the standard berm with fence and landscaping is going to cut it for especially buildings 9 and 10 that abut the closest neighbors. And so we've already started the process, and we'll submit something for approval that are sound manufactured sound attenuation walls. To speak further to the financing, if you guys would like, I can do that as well.
Go ahead.
So Atlas Power was initially set up to provide funding to FX through a joint loan between the North Dakota Bank and a local bank. As Rick had spoken, there were some bankruptcies in our space that caused that project or that financing to go away. And that site initially was set up as specifically funded by the speculative nature of Bitcoin. Within the last couple of months, and this is why phase 2 is so critical, we have completely abandoned the speculative market of Bitcoin and gone to a different arrangement where we are simply a cash-based hosting for another mining of the equipment. So effectively now we have a static flow of income that's U.S. cash-based. We're completely agnostic to Bitcoin based on our funding model. Therefore, having done that, we were able to approach a different commercial lender that has approved us for funding to complete that phase. And so that is where we stand right now. So I think that answers a question on what happens if Bitcoin price goes up and down, as well as where we stand on bringing the contractors in and having them complete those line items that remain in phase 2.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I guess circling back to why we're here to discuss the appeal of shutting their power off because they don't have a certificate of occupancy. I mean, they have regulations that they are not approved for, if I'm saying that correctly. So that's where we're at. The issue is, I mean, if I was moving into a home, if I moved into it and it didn't have a certificate of occupancy, they'd make me move out. Correct? So that's where we're at. for discussion purposes, I'd make a motion to deny the appeal.
We have a motion. Is there a second to deny the appeal? Is there a second to deny the appeal?
I would second that for discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the appeal from Atlas. Now let's open it up for discussion.
There was, in some of the email you sent to us, Cameron, there's talk of the $4,000 a day fine. Is that for the whole site in general, or maybe I read that wrong?
That was an approximate. We would have to look at our fee table to get an exact add up, but it's about $500 a building per day for the building fines and $1,000 per day for the zoning violations for the noise.
Do you have any recommendation, or what are you thinking?
Sure, I appreciate the question, Commissioner Ramberg. So this one's been a little difficult for me just to try to find what the best path forward is. And as this board already knows, my office is tasked with enforcing the ordinance, the codes and regulations that are on the books. I don't go outside of it. I don't go underneath that. That's what I look at, and that's what I intend to enforce. And then if there's an issue with the enforcement of that or a disagreement, they have the right to appeal to this board, such as they did. So we don't look at, again, and I say we, I'm talking about myself and my office, anything to do with speculative market, anything on their private negotiations or contracts, and quite honestly, we have no desire to do that. But when we see that the code's not being followed, it raises a red flag, hence the stop work order. So I would say my recommendations for moving forward could be a number of things, possible routes. Of course, we will honor whatever the board wishes, but I would say at a bare minimum that if the board decides to give them time to correct the issues to obtain finals, or at least temporary certificate of occupancies, state electrical approval, and overall certificate of occupancy for the phase, that some sort of letter, whether it be reviewed by legal or by staff, to waive the county of any liability if someone were to get hurt on that property. He did put up temporary fencing and has security, but I'm still not comfortable without having a CO and the building's fully enclosed, not just with fabric of the county potentially being held or added into any type of litigation if someone were to get hurt out there. So at a bare minimum, I would say that something needs to be drafted by whether it's FX Solutions or Atlas Power to show that the county won't be held liable if an accident were to happen out there due to operating without having the proper certificates in place first. As far as the zoning is a little more difficult because with the zoning ordinance, it does say that all noises must be contained within that district. We don't list decibel ratings, specific ratings, nor are myself or my staff certified to go out there with a certified machine and to take those. That's something we could maybe look into in the future, but it would not help on this case. And so overall, it's obvious by the neighbors here today, there's some that just aren't happy, and they certainly have valid points and arguments. So for staff, we have to weigh if direction's given to us, whether are we going to look at it as a decibel level, or are we going to look at it as any noise? And so that one's a little more difficult because I don't think I guess what I'm trying to say is no matter how much the noise is reduced, it'll never stop complaints. And that's just the nature of the beast. Some may be happy, some may not. And so the ordinance is not, again, specific, the zoning ordinance that is, with decibel ratings. So I'm not quite sure how to recommend or how to move forward on the noise side of things. Something that could be a possibility is also a temporary amount of time to try to contain that noise to an acceptable level by maybe the township board. That's just an idea, and that would also be contingent on their TCOs on getting a certificate of occupancy. And a TCO means, I think I already explained, temporary certificate of occupancy. So there's some ways forward here, but again, it's, as long as they're following the ordinances and the regulations that we have on the books, that's what we're looking for. But I think there's some decisions that need to be made, and no matter what, our office will certainly help to ensure that they're complied by.
So the initial order to shut down, or would be voluntarily the company should shut their own power off because they're in violation. Does that okay? So at what point in time would the fine be started? As of Friday-ish? I mean, I'm,
Typically, it would be when we could provide a timeline of when we know that it started. And so for staff to actually do the site visit ourselves, I believe my first visit was April 18th when phase 2 was already operating and running. So that is another recommendation, is that we could certainly issue these fines of roughly, again, I don't have the exact numbers right now, $4,000 a day until they comply as a temporary, with a temporary certificate of occupancy.
Wouldn't it be more likely though to start on Friday when we said you need to shut down? I mean,
That is valid, and that's probably going to be the case. I would have to consult with Karen. I'm used to the zoning procedure with fines. It's rare that we have follow this far along or move this to this point with building permits. So it's not something I'm as well rehearsed on.
any other questions for Cameron or any other discussion on the motion that's on the floor? I guess I have a question. What can be done from FX or Atlas's side to, if this motion were to go through, what needs to be done to get them to where they need to be?
So for the building side, what we would want to see and what the ordinance or the building code requires is to obtain a certificate of occupancy for the phase. But again, because they're trying to operate as they're building, we have been doing TCOs or finals for each individual building before we phase it out. So overall, completion on the county side, a sign off from the building division that they have finished the requirements. Part of that would involve us making sure that the state electrical board is also approved of the project and signed off on whether it's the individual buildings or the phase. We would look at each building and then the phase. And also the emergency access roads right now, that is definitely a concern. And then the open site and the potential to have unauthorized trespassing and to be hurt. And that's where I kind of had mentioned a letter waiving the county of any liability, and that may cover the emergency roads, possibly could cover that until they get those finished and fixed.
so I guess, I first talked about the voluntary shutdown of power. Let's say they did nothing at all. Would there be a time? Well, obviously the letter went to Montrell Williams that said shut them down. I guess what I'm getting at is we issued order shut down. They haven't, but they're now trying to rectify. Would there be a time frame that says if a lot of this stuff is not addressed within 7 to 8 days, 10, whatever it is, that we'll be forced to shut the power down? In the meantime, they're incurring fines until this is rectified.
Yeah, that is a good question, Commissioner Anderson. And so we base it off the International Building Code, which says that if we feel that there is a immediate hazard to life and or property, we can immediately shut utilities down. There is not a waiting period. And then our notification to the applicant that we're going to do that or we already did that can happen before or after, depending on how those sequences play out. But the building code gives us that authority to do it immediately if we feel there is a hazard, in which myself, the building official, did feel that there was a hazard due to the potential to have unauthorized entry into those buildings with open electrical current running through them.
So if we were going to allow them a time period to get things, all the ducks in a row, and Mr. Tabish had mentioned earlier, wasn't it like, I forget the numbers now, is a matter of like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, you said, or was it like?
To complete completion of phase 2, I would say no more than 45 days, but the containment and to get into compliance with the immediate health hazard and fencing and emergency stuff, I mean, that's all stuff that could be done here in the next 20 days or sooner. I mean, it's like we've already accomplished quite a bit of it, but fencing contractors, things like that, I mean, we've got to go put people together, availability, and I mean, it's gonna be full-time with a big crew here.
Does that puts us right close to in line with the state electrical inspector too, correct?
So correct. They gave a 30-day, but they said when I spoke with the supervisor yesterday over the phone that he was willing to work with not only the property owner and Mr. Tavish, but also the county on what the outcome of this meeting on what they may need to do to adjust their inspection schedule or move forward.
So, I guess just, for discussion, is there, I mean, would you be interested in amending your motion to giving a little time or not?
Okay, so I'll lay it out unless what I'm asking wasn't clear. So if in my opinion, and I could be wrong, Karen, I'm not a lawyer. You step in. I'm sure you will. My thought was, I mean, they're in violation. They're incurring fines from, possibly since Friday. If the appeal is denied, they have X amount of time, whatever we agree on, to start or make sure that a lot of this stuff is rectified, but they're being fined until they get their certificate of occupancy, correct? Does that make sense?
I think if we deny it, we're shutting the power off. Because
Well,
that's what the letter
no,
said on Friday, correct?
Then we need to come,
And that's what the appeal is.
Okay.
The appeal is to say, no, don't shut the power off, right?
and that's why I was asking, is an involuntary shut off or we shut them off? So that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, we do. Well, we can't turn the switch, but we know the guys that can. If this motion goes through, the power gets shut off now. And that's why I was asking, do you want to give time? Any other discussion?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Are you interested in amending your motion at all, or is that the way it is? You want to shut them off?
The point is I want them to rectify it. I mean, there's places of immediate urgency, which is, to me, West End, where there's the noise is unbearable. But, in my opinion, it's like they're going to have to incur the fine because they're in violation. If I moved into a home, like I just said, they'd make me move out. So I have to give the residents their due diligence that, they've been impacted. So these guys are in violation of what they're supposed to do. So if we need to vote down the appeal to discuss how we move forward, then I guess that's how we do it. But
Okay, so any other questions, discussion?
Can I have a moment? This is Jeff with Atlas Power.
No, we've already turned it over to the board. Sorry, Jeff. We're going to go ahead and call for the question. Roll call vote, please.
Bo,
yes.
David,
No.
Barry,
No.
Steve,
No.
Corey,
Yes. Motion failed. Yes, let's open it back up.
All right. I'm just going to throw some ideas out here. Mr. Tavish, you made a lot of promises. And I guess I'm willing to make a motion to the effect of those promises that you made, to make you basically put your money where your mouth is. You indicated that you wanted to be a fair neighbor. You wanted to do what's right for the neighbors and be within the laws. So gentlemen, I'm suggesting that we give them 45 days completion. Yes. We give you the 45-day completion, takes us to June 16th. This commission meets again on June 20th. The stipulations of this 45-day completion would be to do everything that you said you would do, from the berms to the fencing and getting the buildings completed so that you have a certificate of occupancy. And also to continue 24/7 security and to hold county a waiver of accident and liability. And then that the June 20th commission meeting. If none of this is not completed, the commission will make a decision if we have to again at that time, whether or not we're going to continue to move forward or shut the power off. I'm not saying this is kicking down the can down the road, but I think there needs to be something with some teeth in it. And I'll also add to the fact is I think that you need to, as a good neighbor, as somebody mentioned earlier, visit with the neighbors, and that the decibel levels of the sound should be, in my opinion, something that is satisfactory within reason to the neighbors.
Okay, that was your motion? Okay, did everybody follow the motion?
Do you want to say anything about the fines or anything like that?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I guess the question was asked about the fine, so if they're in violation, is there fines incurred from the time we sent them the letter until they get their certificate of occupancy?
I think there needs to be, if that's what the building code says. I mean, if it's in the code, to me, then that's, we would follow it with anybody else. So I think that is
Because, I mean, if they brought in 10 times the crew to get all this stuff done, maybe they could get it inspected and get a CO in out 2 weeks. I don't know. But
I will amend the motion to include fines from the day of the stop work order to the day of the occupancy permit being issued. Is that fair, Cameron?
Yeah, and just to clarify, the permit itself, not if they go the route of the TCO, we're looking for the perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
I would amend
Commissioner
mine.
Kemp, you're okay?
Yep, that would be good.
Okay. So, Karen, do I have to vote on that one too? Or can we amend it since it was still on discussion? Yeah. I'm serious. I'm not. So we would have to approve the amendment, then we would have to approve the motion. Okay, okay. Let's finish our discussion though with the amended motion. Is there any other questions, discussion on this?
amending the motion, yeah.
Okay, Beth, we're gonna do a roll call on the amendment to the motion.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Okay, and now we have to do one on the motion, correct? Now we need to do that. Well, we're back to the discussion of the main motion. If anybody wants anything else? No, everybody good? Okay, roll call.
Barry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes,
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
motion carried. Thank you.
Looks like I got some work to do. All right, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate the commission and your time.
Okay, if I can get my computer to open. Okay, Helen, do you still work here? Or did you retire? That took a while, didn't it?
Good morning. You can see in the position report that we don't have any open positions that require your approval, and right now, although we are seeking some candidates for boards, we don't have any to approve there, so nothing to talk about. But you do have in your packet a copy of the agreement between the City of Williston and Williams County for the administration of the joint library. And I should note that although we call it the agreement, it is actually an amendment to the original agreement. So in 1981, there's an original agreement, and this is actually an amendment. But we have, in shorthand, been calling it the Library JPA for a long time. So we've spent a fair amount of time collaborating with the city and leadership at the joint library, which is, we would all know as the City of Williston Library, to refine this agreement to reflect the way that we have been operating the library and to bring into compliance with some of the rules of the Century Code that have changed since 1981 to just make sure that we're up to snuff. So we seek your approval today on this amendment to the original agreement, and then it will go to the City of Williston next week for their approval.
Well, I would just like to point out that staff has done a ton of work on getting this thing taken care of and getting it put to bed. So I think it's a good document. Thank you for all your hard work.
Make a motion to approve the city, our county city library amendment agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve? Corey?
Yes.
Bo?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Motion carried.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned.
10:31 is correct.